Stop what you're doing and lean in for this one, because the air around Windsor just changed temperature. Kensington nudged, the White House diary shuffled, and suddenly we're staring at a tableau London hasn't seen in years. The Princess of Wales front and center as a US presidential state visit rolls through the gates. Not rumor, not wishful thinking, movement. If you like your royal briefings with context and a steadier pulse than the headlines, stay right here, you're in the right room. The hook is simple and devastatingly effective. The visit has slipped a day forward. Instead of the 17th to 19th, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will now touch down on the 16th and depart on the 18th. That first evening. Sealed. No walkabouts, no cameras, just motorcades and protocols under dusk. On paper it's a minor diary note. In reality it compresses everything that follows and elevates the role the Waleses will play when the curtain lifts. Fewer loose hours, more concentrated optics. Less drift, more design. When the day begins in earnest, the first faces the American couple will see are William and Catherine. That is not courtesy, that is choreography. The future of the crown greeting the present of the Republic, and doing it before the full machinery of a formal welcome begins. From there the procession tips into the King and Queen's register. Inside the estate, expect the pageantry Britain still does better than anyone alive. A royal salute cracking across the East Lawn, scarlet tunics at attention, that electric stillness right before the guns speak. The image will look like a postcard. The message underneath is practical. This house knows how to receive weight, and it does so from a position of ease. Then movement, always movement. A carriage procession through Windsor's grounds, steel and polish catching English light, the route lined with armed forces, who have rehearsed this tighter than any camera can show. Wheels on stone don't only look grand, they sound like continuity. Inside, the day does what Windsor always does, hinges ceremony to substance. The guard of honor is inspected with deliberate steps. A glance, a nod, a shoulder squared tells you more about tone than any communique. Lunch follows in the state dining room, silver pulled from the memory of a nation, menus written like a short essay on English seasons. Then a private viewing from the royal collection, wood, paint, vellum arranged to tell an Atlantic story without bruising it with speeches. Nothing shown on a day like this is accidental. Porcelain can say what politics would be clumsy to phrase. A quieter line will be drawn, too, and it will land hardest. The King and the President will visit the late Queen's tomb. A wreath. A few plain sentences from the Dean. A small tour of the chapel where a country learned the discipline of goodbye. No noise. No theatrics. Just respect, and the image that may outlast every other frame of the week. Later, the red arrows will embroider the sky and the state banquet will seal the day, long table measured to the inch, crystal singing if the room breathes right, and the Princess of Wales exactly where she belongs at such moments, immaculate, composed, turning the mechanics of hospitality into warmth. The final day splits on purpose. The President goes to Chequers to sit down with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, Lady Victoria in attendance. The optics are classic, Churchill's shadow on the wall, the ledger of the special relationship kept up to date, but the work is contemporary, a look at Sir Winston's archives, pilgrimage, yes, but also punctuation, a business reception hosted by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, where the talk is investment and jobs, the language that justifies plumes and pageantry to a modern electorate. Meanwhile the First Lady's mourning will move with a softer tread through Windsor's quieter treasures. Queen Mary's doll's house first, domestic wonder miniaturized so precisely it still disarms jaded adults, then the Royal Library. Oak and leather and the kind of history you can smell. And then the moment that tells you exactly where the palace wants the day's heart to beat. Melania meets the Princess of Wales in Frogmore Gardens. The company matters. Chief Scout Dwayne Fields and the Scout Squirrels, the youngest pioneers, will be there because Catherine has been president of the Scout Association since 2020, and the squirrels fold neatly into her long game. Early years, confidence, community. If diplomacy is a relay, this is the baton pass. Not in a drawing room, but on grass, at child height, with a question or two that can move a life 3 degrees in the right direction. Late afternoon gathers both couples at Checkers for the grace notes. A doorway built for history, a final photograph that people will read with a magnifying glass for commas and fingertips, and then motorcades dissolving into the countryside. The big shapes will be obvious, the small tells, the half-beat between sentences, the eyes when the hands part, are where the week's truth will live. Now, why the shift? It will be written up as diary pressure, and it may well be. But compressing the visit trims slack and concentrates attention where the palace prefers it. On Windsor, not Westminster, on the Crown's continuity, not its corridors. Fewer chances for stray optics, more control over the spine of the story. It's also a subtle recalibration of who frames whom. Begin with the Waleses, not because they outrank, but because they extend. This is succession as service, not as rivalry. Watch Catherine's positioning. Greeting a US president at the top of the day is not a photo op for a pretty dress. It's a statement about the shape of the next decade. She's been building toward this without fuss. Patronages that don't chase fashion, early years work that threads through health visitors and employers instead of just hashtags, conservation that talks to classrooms and councils rather than microphones alone. On visits like this, clothes and gestures turn into instruments. Expect the pitch to be Balmoral soft, heritage notes in a modern cut, jewelry paired to a murmur, the rhythm of small talk tuned to point the conversation where it can do some good. She plays this music without noise. There's another layer for those who read under headlines. The balance between tradition and tact is never accidental. A ride through Windsor in open carriages nods to the past. Scouts in Frogmore point to the next decade. A salute on the lawn puts steel behind the handshake. A wreath at the late Queen's resting place persuades without a word. That's choreography, yes, but when it's done well it becomes governance by grace. Older viewers recognize the method instantly, because it feels like manners. The right person in the right place, the right tone at the right moment. Security will hum in the background, as it should when a presidential convoy meets royal protocol. The private 16th is partly prudence. The rest will unfold under the default British solution: visible order, invisible planning, patience from people in earpieces you'll never see. Logistics like this are a hymn in their own right. Routes rehearsed, decoys prepped, timings that look effortless, because 100 unphotographed professionals have spent a month making them so. If you keep a notebook, circle 2 names for the opening handshake: Warren A. Stevens, the U.S. ambassador in London, and Henry Hood, the Lord-in-Waiting. They'll be the first hands extended in the King's name, polite prologue, meaningful in its quiet way. Note, too, the President's Arc, Churchill's papers for sentiment, the Chancellor's reception for commerce, a glide to the airport for finality. Read together, those stops say exactly what both sides want said: history, money, farewell. What does it add up to? For Catherine, a major role, yes, but more importantly, a visible consolidation of the style she has sharpened for years: less speech, more substance, less drama, more depth. Expect her to give the room to the guests and steal it back with competence. For the palace, a reminder that the monarchy shines brightest not when it dazzles, but when it steadies, when it lends old rooms to new purposes and leaves them warmer than it found them. And for those who will watch the carriages, colors, and measured steps across old stone, an assurance that even on a week of late switches and tight margins, the page turns cleanly. Look for the small, telling frames. The president's eyes at the wreath. The Queen's timing at the banquet. Her half-second beat is a metronome courtiers swear by. The King's pace on the lawn, edited by Prudence, but still his own. William's talent for listening longer than he speaks in rooms that prefer to perform. The First Lady's face, when the doll's house opens and the scales of effort become clear. The Scouts in Frogmore sounding like Britain's future, muddy, brave, unself-conscious. These are the details that make a state visit feel like a country being itself on purpose. And a word to our American subscribers, especially the ones who watch London the way London watches them, this is not mere costume. The Royal Collection viewing is a policy conversation in objects. The guard inspection is an essay on order. The wreath at St. George's is how an ancient house says, "We remember," without hogging the room. Even the business reception is part of the bargain, a way of proving that pageantry earns its keep in the language of jobs and numbers. If you see the choreography, good. If you feel steadier after watching it, better. Meanwhile, expect whispers about whether any spare parts of the family orbit will intersect with all this. The answer is the same as always, not on camera, not on days when the sovereign hosts the head of a republic. This week belongs to the official script. The private chapters, if any, will be written where they should be, quietly, or not at all. So, hold the big picture, and keep your eye on the joints. A day moved tells you where the weight will sit. A first handshake tells you who frames the photograph. A garden meeting with Scouts tells you who will still matter when the flags are boxed. And a princess who can tune a room with a dress that nods to Balmoral while talking to Arkansas and Arizona without saying a word tells you why this institution keeps getting tomorrow right, just often enough to survive. If this helped you see past the headlines into the mechanics, the why behind the what, tap like, send it to the friend who appreciates the craft of a good state visit, and subscribe. We'll be here when the wheels touch tarmac, when the guns speak, when the red arrows stitch the sky, and when the cars melt back into the green. The headlines will shout. We'll keep our voice level and tell you what actually mattered.